Every ounce of my blood, every sleepless night I'd poured into that project, stolen in a single Monday morning meeting. They thought they'd broken me when they pushed me aside, right before my creation would change everything. But being sidelined didn't destroy me. It ignited something far more dangerous. Corporate karma, they call it. Justice, I prefer. And when it came for them, it came with the force of every betrayal they'd ever dealt, every credit they'd ever stolen, every person they'd ever stepped on to climb higher. My name is Rachel Donovan, and at 34, I'd already sacrificed more to Brightcore Solutions than most people give to their marriages. The Denver skyline stretched beyond my 10th floor window, but I rarely had time to admire it. My desk, cluttered with coffee-stained reports, 3 monitors displaying endless spreadsheets, and a wilting succulent my mother had optimistically gifted me, had become more familiar than my own apartment. I started here 8 years ago as an unpaid intern, fetching lattes and making copies while my Columbia degree collected dust. But I was hungry, starving, really, for something more than the mediocrity I'd watched consume my father in his government job. So I stayed late, volunteered for everything, taught myself coding on weekends, and slowly, painfully, clawed my way up to senior project manager. Brightcore wasn't just another tech company. It was a gladiator arena dressed in glass walls and ergonomic furniture. The company motto, "Innovation through excellence," might as well have read, "Survival of the most ruthless." Every quarter, someone got promoted, someone got fired, and someone got thrown under the bus. The trick was making sure you weren't in that last category. The office hummed with barely contained aggression. You could feel it in the way people guarded their screens when you walked by, how conversations died when certain names entered rooms, how smiles never quite reached anyone's eyes. We were all sharks, circling, waiting for blood in the water. But I'd learned to navigate these waters. My weapon wasn't backstabbing or brown-nosing, it was competence. Pure, undeniable competence. While others played politics, I delivered results. While they schmoozed at happy hours, I optimized systems. And it had all led to this, Project Prometheus. For 18 months, I'd been developing a revolutionary healthcare data management platform. It wasn't sexy, no flashy apps or viral potential, but it would streamline how hospitals shared critical patient information, potentially saving thousands of lives and millions in operational costs. More importantly for Brightcore, 3 major hospital networks were ready to sign contracts worth $47 million. This was my baby. I'd conceived it during a bout of insomnia, pitched it despite skepticism, fought for funding when the board wanted to invest in another social media venture. I'd recruited the team, managed every sprint, debugged code until my eyes burned, and personally demonstrated the prototype to skeptical executives who thought healthcare tech was too complicated. My team respected me, not loved, but respected. There was Tom, the back-end genius who only wore black. Sandra, the UI designer who could make even medical forms look elegant. And Amit, fresh from MIT, whose enthusiasm hadn't yet been crushed by corporate reality. We weren't friends, but we were something better. Efficient. The presentation to MedTech Solutions, our biggest potential client, was scheduled for Friday, 5 days away. I'd rehearsed it hundreds of times, memorized every slide, anticipated every question. The conference room was already booked, the catering ordered, the demo servers tested and retested. Standing in that office Monday morning, watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Pride, not the hollow kind that comes from a good quarterly review, but real, bone-deep satisfaction. I'd built something that mattered. I should have known better. In places like Brightcore, pride is just another word for target. The email arrived at 7:47 a.m. Urgent, Project Prometheus meeting, conference room A, 8 a.m. From Mark Ellison, Senior Vice President of Development. My stomach tightened. Mark never scheduled meetings this early unless something was wrong, or about to be. I grabbed my laptop and the Prometheus presentation materials, though I knew every detail by heart. The elevator ride felt longer than usual. When the doors opened on the executive floor, the antiseptic smell of power hit me. Fresh flowers, expensive coffee, and fear. Mark sat at the head of the conference table, his silver hair perfectly styled, his smile perfectly predatory. Beside him sat Jessica Rowe, and my blood immediately cooled. Jessica, blonde, porcelain pretty, and sharp as broken glass, had joined the company 2 years ago and rocketed through promotions with suspicious speed. Everyone knew she and Mark had lunch meetings that lasted 3 hours. Everyone pretended not to notice. "Rachel, good morning," Mark said, gesturing to a chair across from them. The power dynamics were clear, them versus me. "Coffee?" "I'm fine. What's this about?" Jessica leaned forward, her manicured nails clicking against her iPad. "We've been reviewing the Prometheus project structure, and we've identified some necessary adjustments before Friday's presentation." Adjustments? In corporate speak, that word was a loaded gun. "What kind of adjustments?" I kept my voice steady, though my pulse hammered. Mark cleared his throat. "We feel the project needs more senior oversight for the client presentation. Jessica will be taking the lead on Friday. You'll still be involved, of course, in a supporting capacity." The words hit like ice water. Supporting capacity. After 18 months, after everything I'd built, I'd be relegated to clicking through slides while Jessica took credit for my work. "I don't understand," I said, though I understood perfectly. "I've been leading this project since inception. The client knows me, my team." "Your team will adapt," Jessica interrupted, her voice honeyed poison. "I've already reviewed your materials. They're adequate. But this presentation needs executive polish. The kind that comes from experience at my level." Her level? She'd been a project manager for less than 6 months. "Mark." I turned to him, searching for any trace of the mentor who'd once told me hard work would be rewarded. "The medtech executives specifically asked for me. They've been working with me for months. Changing presenters now could jeopardize. The decision is final." His tone sliced through my protest. "Jessica has my full confidence. She'll present the technical overview and handle negotiations. You'll be there to address any granular questions that might arise." Granular questions. I'd be the help desk while Jessica starred in the show I'd written, directed, and produced. "Is this because of the Patterson incident?" I asked, grasping for logic in this insanity. 3 weeks ago, I'd reported a security flaw in a project Jessica had fast-tracked. It had delayed the launch, but saved the company from a potential breach. Jessica's smile tightened. "This isn't personal, Rachel. It's about what's best for Brightcore." "Besides," Mark added, straightening his tie, "you should be grateful. This is valuable experience for you, learning to support executive-level initiatives. It's an important skill for someone at your level." My level. 8 years, and I was still being reminded of my place. The meeting ended with mechanical politeness. They'd already updated the client about the enhanced leadership structure. They'd already reprinted the presentation materials with Jessica as the project lead. They'd already rewritten history. And I hadn't even been notified until it was done. I walked back to my desk in a daze. Tom looked up from his monitors, saw my face, and quickly looked away. Word traveled fast in glass towers. By lunch, everyone would know Rachel Donovan had been benched right before her biggest moment. Sandra caught me in the break room. "I heard," she said quietly. "It's bullshit." "It's business," I replied, pouring coffee with trembling hands. "It's theft," she insisted. "Jessica doesn't even understand the back-end architecture. She called APIs computer things in last week's meeting." But competence had never been the currency here. I'd been too naive to see it, too proud to play the game. And now, with the finish line in sight, I'd been reminded that merit was just a myth we told ourselves to make the exploitation bearable. Friday would come. Jessica would stand in front of MedTech Solutions, reading my words, presenting my vision, signing my deals. And I would sit in the corner, smiling, supportive, invisible, exactly where they'd always wanted me. The apartment felt like a tomb when I got home that night. I'd left the office at exactly 5:01 p.m., the first time in years, because sitting at my desk felt like drowning in slow motion. The walls of my studio seemed to press closer as I stood in the darkness, still wearing my coat, still clutching my laptop bag like armor I no longer needed. I didn't cry. Crying would mean acknowledging the pain, and I wasn't ready for that. Instead, I opened a bottle of wine, the good stuff I'd been saving for Friday's celebration, and drank it standing at my kitchen counter, staring at nothing. Sleep was impossible. I lay in bed replaying every interaction, every decision, searching for the moment I'd lost control. Had I been too confident, too direct, not political enough? The questions circled like vultures, picking at the carcass of my career. By 3 a.m., the wine had worn off, leaving only rage, pure, crystalline rage that made my hands shake and my jaw clench. I'd given Brightcore everything. Birthdays missed, relationships abandoned, health ignored, all for what? To be a footnote in Jessica Rowe's success story? I grabbed my laptop and opened the Prometheus files. There they were, hundreds of documents, thousands of hours. My entire professional identity condensed into organized folders. My finger hovered over the delete key. It would be so easy. One click and Jessica would have nothing to present. But that was petty revenge, the kind that would only validate their decision to sideline me. No, I thought. If you're going to burn it down, be smart about it. The thought surprised me. I'd never been vengeful, never been calculating. I was the good soldier, the team player, the one who believed hard work spoke for itself. But that Rachel had been murdered in conference room A at 8 a.m. What remained was something else, someone else. Tuesday came with whispers and sideways glances. The office had already adjusted to the new reality. Jessica held court near the coffee machine, casually discussing her project with executives who'd never given me the time of day. I watched from my desk, invisible, as she mangled technical terms and promised impossible features. "Rachel," she called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Could you send me the latest user metrics? I need to review them before I optimize the presentation." Optimize. She didn't even know what that word meant in our context. "Of course," I replied, my voice automated, empty. Right away. The humiliation was deliberate, orchestrated. Every request was public. Every interaction a reminder of my new position. She wanted me broken, wanted me to quit, to disappear quietly and leave her throne uncontested. Wednesday night, I couldn't take it anymore. I called in sick Thursday, though sickness didn't describe what I felt. I sat in my apartment, still in pajamas at noon, laptop open to job sites I couldn't focus on. My phone buzzed with messages from Tom and Sandra, but I couldn't respond. What would I say? That I was fine? That it didn't matter? That I was already planning my resignation letter? But resignation felt like death. Not the dramatic kind. The slow, gray kind where you simply fade from existence. I imagined Jessica's presentation going perfectly, the contracts signed, the bonuses distributed. I imagined my name forgotten, my contribution erased, my years of sacrifice reduced to a LinkedIn update nobody would read. "They want you to disappear," a voice in my head whispered. "They're counting on your professionalism, your dignity, your need to exit gracefully." The voice was right. They expected me to follow the script, the bitter employee who leaves quietly, who maintains references, who doesn't make waves. It was the rational choice, the professional choice, the choice that would preserve my reputation. But rationality had gotten me here, alone in a dark apartment, discarded like obsolete software. I opened a new document and started typing. Not a resignation letter, something else. A plan. A map of every weakness I'd observed, every shortcut Jessica took, every corner Mark cut. I knew where the bodies were buried because I'd helped dig some of the graves, always believing I was protecting the company. "If you strike at kings," another voice warned, "you must kill them." But I wasn't striking at kings. I was going to let them destroy themselves. All I had to do was ensure the right information reached the right people at the right time. Not lies. Never lies. The truth was devastating enough. By Thursday night, I'd stopped feeling like a victim. The tears had crystallized into something harder, sharper. I looked in the mirror and saw someone I didn't recognize, someone who understood that in this corporate arena, being good meant being gone. Friday would still come. Jessica would still present, but it would be the beginning of something, not the end. They'd taken my project, my credit, my dignity. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd left me with nothing left to lose. Friday's presentation went exactly as expected, a disaster wrapped in Jessica's designer suit. I sat in the corner, watching her stumble through technical specifications, making promises the platform couldn't keep. When MedTech's CTO asked about data encryption protocols, she turned to me with that practiced smile. Rachel can handle the granular details, I answered perfectly, professionally, while mentally documenting every lie she told. That weekend, I began my real work. The first thing I learned about revenge is that it requires patience. You don't storm castles, you study them. You learn which stones are loose, which guards fall asleep, which doors creak. Jessica and Mark had given me the perfect position for reconnaissance, invisible but present, dismissed but necessary. I started with Jessica's expense reports. During my years at Brightcore, I'd been meticulous about every receipt, every Uber ride, every client dinner. Jessica, drunk on her rapid ascent, was sloppier. That client dinner at Maison Blanc. The receipt showed 2 bottles of Dom Perignon and a bill for $3,200 on a night when our biggest client was in Tokyo. The Miami conference she'd attended. The conference had been in Seattle. Miami was where her boyfriend lived. But expense fraud was pedestrian. I needed something bigger. The breakthrough came through Maya Carter, my former roommate from Columbia, who now worked at Morrison & Associates, the law firm that handled Brightcore's contracts. We met for drinks in Lodo, away from the tech corridor where anyone might recognize us. "You look terrible," Maya said, sliding into the booth. "Thanks. That's what systematic humiliation does for your complexion." She studied me over her martini. "I heard about the Prometheus situation. Jessica Rowe is already bragging about it at industry mixers. Let her brag. Pride comes before the fall." Maya raised an eyebrow. "That doesn't sound like the Rachel who used to stress about using the office printer for personal documents. That Rachel is dead. This one needs information." What Maya told me shifted everything. Morrison & Associates had concerns about Brightcore's recent contracts, specifically ones Jessica had fast-tracked. There were irregularities, signatures that didn't match. Terms changed after signing. Nothing proven, but enough smoke to suggest fire. Ethan Miller was my next asset. We'd dated briefly 2 years ago, ending things amicably when work consumed us both. He now ran cybersecurity for a competitor but maintained friendships throughout the industry. More importantly, he still had friends inside Brightcore's IT department. "You want me to hack your own company?" he asked over encrypted messages. "No, I want you to teach me about security vulnerabilities. Theoretical discussion only." His theoretical lesson revealed that Jessica had been accessing files beyond her clearance level using Mark's credentials. Either he'd given her his passwords, a massive security violation, or she'd obtained them through other means. Both scenarios were corporate poison. I documented everything in encrypted files, building a dossier that would make Watergate look like a parking violation, but information without distribution was worthless. I needed allies inside Brightcore, people who'd been stepped on, overlooked, discarded. Tom from my team was the first to flip. Jessica had publicly humiliated him in a meeting, calling his code amateur, despite it being the backbone of Prometheus. Sandra joined after Jessica claimed credit for her UI designs in a company newsletter. Amit surprised me. I thought his optimism was unshakable. But Jessica had tried to poach his algorithm work for another project. "We can't do anything illegal," I told them at our clandestine meeting in a dim sum restaurant in Aurora. "We're not hackers or criminals. We're just employees who happen to notice things." Notice things like Jessica's mistake in the Henderson contract that cost us $2 million. Tom asked, pushing his glasses up. "Or Mark's interesting interpretation of procurement policies," Sandra added. We became shadows with smartphones, documenting every impropriety, every shortcut, every lie. Jessica's habit of forwards confidential emails to her personal Gmail. Mark's meetings with vendors who somehow always won bids. The way project budgets mysteriously shifted to fund their pet ventures. The most damning evidence came from an unexpected source, Jessica herself. She'd grown comfortable with her position, careless with her conversations. She didn't notice me in the bathroom stall when she bragged on the phone about how she'd handled the Rachel problem and how Mark had promised her a VP position after the medtech deal closed. The best part, she laughed, is that she actually thinks she matters, like 8 years means anything if you don't know how to play the game. I recorded every word. By week 3 of my surveillance, I had enough to destroy them both. But destruction wasn't enough. I wanted them to feel what I felt, to watch their work stolen, their future erased, their worth dismissed. I wanted them to understand that competence might not be the currency. But information was power. The plan crystallized as I reviewed my evidence. I wouldn't just expose them, I'd let them expose themselves. All I had to do was ensure the right people were watching when they did. The call came on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after my demotion. Unknown number, Denver area code. Rachel Donovan? Yes? This is David Constantine from Viridian Labs. We've been following your work on the Prometheus project. I'm wondering if you'd be interested in having coffee. Viridian Labs. I knew them. A biotech startup that had just secured Series B funding. Small, hungry. The kind of place where merit still mattered because they couldn't afford for it not to. We met at a cafe in Rhino, far from Brightcore's sphere. David was everything Mark wasn't. Young, earnest, with calloused hands that suggested he still coded himself. He'd done his homework, knowing details about Prometheus that weren't public. I'll be direct, he said, cutting through small talk. We know what happened at Brightcore. Tech community's smaller than people think. Jessica Rowe might be presenting, but everyone knows whose brain built that platform. Assuming that's true, why do you care? Because we need someone who can build something similar for genomic data. Someone who understands healthcare infrastructure but isn't trapped in traditional thinking. He leaned forward. We can't match Brightcore's salary, but we can offer something else. Ownership, real equity, not the insulting options packages big companies throw around. I have non-compete clauses, which prevent you from taking Brightcore's intellectual property, not from using your own expertise. Besides, he smiled, I have very good lawyers who love David versus Goliath cases. The offer was tempting, but I needed to be strategic. I'm interested, but I need time. There are complications I need to resolve first. The medtech deal. I kept my face neutral. Among other things. David nodded. We can wait. But Rachel? Don't wait too long. Revenge might feel satisfying. But building something new? That's actually fulfilling. He was right, partially. But he didn't understand that my revenge and my rebirth were intertwined. I couldn't move forward while Jessica and Mark stood on my corpse. I accepted Viridian's offer the next week, negotiating a start date 6 weeks out. It gave me a safety net and, more importantly, legitimacy. I wasn't a bitter employee anymore. I was a professional making a strategic career move. The shift in dynamics was immediate. When news of my move leaked, and I made sure it leaked, suddenly people saw me differently. Jessica's dismissive attitude turned cautious. Mark started asking my opinions in meetings again. They smelled danger, but couldn't identify its source. Meanwhile, I refined the architecture I'd developed for Prometheus, improving it, evolving it into something Brightcore couldn't claim. Every night after my humiliating days at the office, I worked on Viridian's project, pouring my rage into creation instead of destruction. Well, not instead of. The destruction continued in parallel. Tom had discovered something interesting in the code repository. Jessica had been submitting commits under other developers' names, making it appear she contributed more than she had. It was a small thing, but it revealed pattern. She wasn't just stealing credit in presentations, but in the permanent record. Sandra found worse. The UI designs Jessica claimed? They contained metadata proving Sandra created them months before Jessica joined the company. Jessica had simply copied files and changed creation dates, not realizing the embedded data remained. But the crown jewel came from Amit. His algorithm, the one Jessica tried to poach, had a hidden signature, a mathematical Easter egg he'd embedded. When Jessica's new project went live, it would expose her theft to anyone who knew where to look. "Why did you hide signatures in your code?" I asked him. He shrugged, his young face cynical beyond its years. "My dad worked at Intel during the chip wars. He taught me to always mark my work. Trust, but verify," he said. Or in corporate America, don't trust and always verify. I coordinated with my allies to ensure all this information would surface naturally. Tom would raise concerns about code attribution during the next sprint review. Sandra would present her original designs at the company showcase, with timestamps visible. Amit would publish a paper about his algorithm, coincidentally just as Jessica's project launched. Meanwhile, I built Viridian's platform, creating something that would make Prometheus look like a rough draft. Every line of code was mine, every innovation protected. But more than that, it was clean, built without the compromises in politics that had infected Brightcore's version. The news about MedTech started as whispers. They were reassessing the contract. They had concerns about implementation. They wanted to revisit certain terms. Jessica's perfect presentation had won the initial agreement, but the due diligence was revealing cracks. I watched her scramble, demanding impossible fixes from the team she'd alienated. She cornered me in the break room, her composure finally cracking. "The integration protocols you documented, where are the updated versions?" "In the shared drive, where they've always been." "Those are from last month. The client is asking about features you promised." "Features you promised," I corrected. "I wasn't in those meetings, remember? Supporting capacity only." Her face flushed. "Don't play games, Rachel. We both know you understand this system better than anyone." "Used to, but I'm transitioning out, focusing on knowledge transfer. I'm sure you can handle it. You have executive polish, after all." The panic in her eyes was beautiful. She'd built a castle on foundations she didn't understand, and the tide was coming in. The email went out at 2:47 a.m. on a Thursday, sent from an anonymous Proton Mail account to every member of Brightcore's board, the senior leadership team, and, critically, to MedTech's executives. The subject line was simple: Due diligence concerns, Prometheus project. I wasn't the sender, technically. The beauty of my plan was that I'd never directly pulled the trigger. I'd simply ensured the right information existed in the right places and let human nature do the rest. One of my allies, I never asked who, had taken the final step. The attachment contained everything: expense reports with highlighted irregularities, screenshots of Jessica's plagiarized code commits, recordings of Mark discussing vendor kickbacks, security logs showing unauthorized access to confidential files. Each piece individually might have been explained away. But together they painted a picture of systematic fraud and incompetence. By 7 a.m., Brightcore's parking lot looked like a law enforcement convention. Not actual police. Worse. Internal auditors, external consultants, lawyers from 3 different firms. The glass walls that had once symbolized transparency now felt like a fishbowl with sharks circling outside. I arrived at my usual time, coffee in hand, wearing my best dress, the one I'd bought for the presentation I never got to give. The office was chaos. Jessica stood in Mark's office, gesticulating wildly, her voice carrying through the glass despite the soundproofing. Mark sat with his head in his hands, his perfect silver hair finally disheveled. "Rachel." Tom appeared at my desk, eyes wide. "Did you see the email?" "What email?" I asked, opening my laptop with practiced calm. I read through it slowly, my expression carefully neutral, occasionally allowing a small frown or raised eyebrow. Around me, the office buzzed with panic and speculation. Phones rang incessantly. People huddled in corners, whispering. At 10 a.m., an emergency all-hands meeting was called. The CEO, Richard Brennan, who I'd seen maybe twice in 8 years, stood at the podium, his face grave. "I'll be direct. Serious allegations have been raised about financial irregularities and project management within our development division. We're launching a full investigation. Until it's complete, Mark Ellison and Jessica Rowe have been placed on administrative leave." The room erupted. Administrative leave was corporate speak for, "You're fired, but we need to cover our asses legally first." Additionally, Brennan continued, raising his voice over the noise, "The MedTech contract is under review. They've expressed concerns about our ability to deliver the Prometheus project as specified." My phone vibrated. A text from David at Viridian. "Saw the news. Your start date still works." "Perfectly," I replied. The investigation moved faster than I expected. By Friday afternoon, forensic accountants had confirmed the expense fraud. By Monday, the code attribution scandal had leaked to TechCrunch. By Wednesday, MedTech officially pulled out of the deal, citing loss of confidence in Brightcore's leadership and integrity. Jessica tried to call me 17 times. I didn't answer. She finally caught me in the parking garage, mascara streaking her perfect face. "You did this," she hissed. "I know you did this." "Did what? Document your expense reports? Write code under false attributions? Make promises to clients you couldn't keep?" I kept my voice steady, almost sympathetic. "I've been in supporting capacity, remember? I don't have that kind of influence." "You vindictive bitch. You couldn't handle being passed over, so you destroyed everything." "I didn't destroy anything. I'm moving to a better opportunity." "You destroyed yourself the moment you decided to build your success on stolen foundations." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "You want to know the difference between us? I spent 8 years building my expertise. You spent 2 years building your connections. Guess which one survives an audit?" Mark's fall was quieter, but more complete. The vendor kickback investigation revealed a network of corruption going back years. His wife filed for divorce the same day the FBI raided his home office. His LinkedIn profile disappeared entirely, though screenshots of it circulated in group chats with laughing emojis. The best part? Brightcore begged me to stay. Brennan himself called, offering the senior director position, a 40% raise, and the lead on Prometheus. What was left of it? "I appreciate the offer," I told him. "But I've committed to Viridian. Besides, Brightcore has some cultural issues to resolve. I wouldn't feel comfortable returning to an environment where this kind of misconduct was possible." The irony was delicious. They needed me now, desperately. But it was too late. The company's reputation was shattered. Stock price down 12%. 3 other major clients threatening to leave, all because they'd chosen Jessica's connections over my competence. The tech blogs had a field day. Brightcore's Prometheus burns down. How office politics destroyed a $47 million deal, read one headline. Another, "The Jessica Rowe Scandal, a cautionary tale of corporate climbing." My favorite was an opinion piece titled "The Revenge of the Worker Bees: How Brightcore's Most Overlooked Employee Exposed Its Rotten Core." They never named me directly, but anyone in the industry knew. The aftermath was even sweeter than I'd imagined. Mark Ellison became unemployable in tech. No company would touch someone under federal investigation for kickbacks. Last I heard, he was selling real estate in Colorado Springs. His silver hair and expensive suits now pushing suburban homes instead of software solutions. His fall from the C-suite to cold calling potential buyers was so complete that it became a cautionary tale at business schools. Jessica's descent was more public, more humiliating. She tried to spin it initially, claiming she was a whistleblower who'd been scapegoated. But when the code attribution evidence surfaced, when her plagiarized presentations were dissected on Reddit, when former colleagues came forward with their own stories of her theft, the narrative collapsed. She deleted her social media after someone created a Twitter bot that responded to every tech influencer's post with, "Still more original than Jessica Rowe's work." Her boyfriend left her. Her MBA connections distanced themselves. The professional network she'd spent years cultivating evaporated overnight. She ended up taking a junior marketing role at a vitamin supplement company in Fort Collins, 60 miles from Denver's tech scene. The woman who'd promised medtech impossible features was now writing copy for protein powder. Brightcore never recovered. The investigation revealed deeper problems. A culture of shortcuts. A leadership team more concerned with optics than operations. They lost 60% of their development team within 3 months. The Prometheus project died completely, taking with it any chance of recovery. By December, acquisition rumors circulated. By January, they'd sold to a competitor for a fraction of their previous valuation. Tom, Sandra, and Amit all left too, finding better positions easily. The market was hungry for developers who'd survived Brightcore's implosion with their integrity intact. Tom became a technical lead at Google's Boulder office. Sandra launched her own UI consulting firm. Amit joined me at Viridian, where his algorithms found the respect they deserved. The old guard at Brightcore, the ones who'd whispered sympathetically while doing nothing, reached out with coffee invitations and networking requests. I declined them all. They'd watched my public humiliation, enabled Jessica's rise, stayed silent when it mattered. Their late solidarity meant nothing. Some called what happened to Brightcore unfair, disproportionate to the crimes. The company employed 300 people, most of whom had nothing to do with Mark and Jessica's corruption. But that was the point. Corruption at the top poisoned everything below. Every junior developer who'd been passed over for someone with connections. Every project manager who'd watched their work stolen. Every competent employee who'd been told they weren't executive material. We all paid for their system. It was only fair that the system finally paid us back. The media painted different narratives. Some called it justice, a victory for workers everywhere. Others termed it vindictive, warning about the dangers of disgruntled employees. Tech forums debated whether I was a hero or a villain. Though they never had my real name, I'd been too careful for that. But everyone knew that somewhere out there was the architect of Brightcore's downfall. And that knowledge changed things. It made executives think twice before stealing credit. It made boards ask harder questions about sudden promotions. It made companies value competence, at least temporarily. Out of fear, if not principle. Brightcore's former clients started calling Viridian. They'd heard about our genomic data platform, remarkably similar to Prometheus but more advanced. They knew I was there, knew what I could build when politics didn't interfere. MedTech signed with us, a smaller deal than Brightcore's inflated promises, but real, sustainable, built on foundations I understood completely. The old employees group chat, the one I'd been removed from after my supporting capacity demotion, was leaked to me by Sandra. They spent weeks dissecting what had happened, trying to understand how their comfortable corruption had been exposed. The paranoia was delicious. They suspected everyone except the invisible woman they'd dismissed. It had to be someone with access. One message read, "Someone who knew the systems, the people, the weak points." Maybe it was Rachel, someone suggested, followed immediately by laughing emojis. Rachel? She doesn't have that in her. Too professional, too by the book. Besides, she was barely here those last weeks. That's what made it perfect. They'd created the very blindness that destroyed them. By pushing me to the margins, they'd put me in the shadows where I could see everything while being seen by no one. They'd handed me the weapon and painted the target, then turned their backs in supreme confidence that someone like me would never pull the trigger. 6 months later, a recruiter reached out with a familiar name in the subject line. Jessica Rowe is seeking new opportunities. I deleted it without reading, but not before noting the desperation of reaching out through recruiters to someone who'd destroyed you. She was radioactive in tech, and she knew it. The executive polish she'd worn like armor was gone, revealed as the cheap veneer it had always been. The Denver Tech Summit was the industry's premier event. 3 days of keynotes, panels, and networking at the Colorado Convention Center. Viridian had sent me as their lead presenter, showcasing our genomic platform that had just secured FDA approval. the same platform that had grown from Prometheus's ashes into something far more powerful. I stood backstage, adjusting the microphone, when I saw them. Mark and Jessica, sitting in the middle rows, trying to blend into the crowd of 1,000 attendees. They weren't together. Mark sat alone near the aisle, his once perfect suit slightly dated, his posture deflated. Jessica was 5 rows back, wearing the forced smile of someone attending on a day pass, not a corporate ticket. They were here for the same reason everyone else was: to network, to find their way back into the industry that had expelled them. The summit was their Hail Mary, their last shot at redemption in a community with a long memory. The moderator introduced me, Rachel Donovan, Chief Technology Officer of Viridian Labs, whose revolutionary genomic data platform has transformed how we approach personalized medicine. CTO. The title felt perfect on my tongue. I walked onto the stage to generous applause. The presentation screens lit up with Viridian's logo, then shifted to live demonstrations of our platform. As I spoke, I could see Mark shrink in his seat. Jessica's forced smile faltered. They were watching their replacement, not just for their jobs, but for their entire existence in this space, command the room they'd been banished from. Innovation, I said, clicking to a slide about data integrity, requires more than just vision. It demands authenticity, genuine expertise, and above all, ethical foundations. The healthcare industry can't afford the kind of shortcuts that plague other sectors. Lives depend on our commitment to truth. I didn't look at them directly, didn't need to. The words were for the audience, but the message reached its intended targets. I saw Jessica check her phone repeatedly, probably hoping for any distraction from this moment. Mark stared at his hands. 45 minutes later, I finished a standing ovation. The Q&A was filled with job offers disguised as questions, partnership proposals wrapped in compliments. I answered each with the confidence of someone who'd earned their position through competence, not connections. As I left the stage, the crowd moved with me. Executives wanting meetings, developers wanting advice, journalists wanting quotes. I was surrounded by the very people who'd ignored me at Brightcore, now treating me like the oracle of health tech. Through the crowd, I caught Jessica's eye. She stood frozen by the exit, watching me navigate the attention she'd once commanded. Our gazes held for a moment, hers desperate, mine indifferent. Then she turned and walked out, her heels clicking on the convention center floor, each step taking her further from the world she'd tried to steal her way into. Mark didn't even try to approach. He slipped out during the networking break, invisible in a way he'd never been as SVP. The silver fox who'd once prowled Brightcore's halls was now just another middle-aged man with a scandal on his resume and diminishing prospects. The summit's closing ceremony featured an award I hadn't expected: Innovator of the Year. As I stood on that stage, holding the crystal trophy, I thought about the Monday morning meeting that had started all this. Conference Room A, 8 my AM, where they'd tried to erase me. They'd been right about one thing. I hadn't understood how to play their game, but they'd failed to realize I didn't need to play it. I just needed to end it. That night, at the after-party at Union Station, surrounded by my Viridian team and industry leaders who now knew my name, my worth, my value, I raised a glass of champagne, not to toast my success, but to acknowledge a simple truth. Corporate karma isn't mystical or patient. It's the inevitable result when competence finally gets tired of being stepped on by connections. The best revenge wasn't destroying them, it was replacing them. It was standing where they should have been, achieving what they'd claimed to deserve, and doing it all without needing to steal a single line of code or claim a single unearned credit. Jessica had been wrong about me. She'd said I didn't matter, that 8 years meant nothing without knowing how to play the game. But I'd learned something she never did. When you change the rules, you don't need to play, you just need to win. As I looked out at Denver's skyline from the rooftop bar, the mountains dark against the stars, I smiled. Not the forced smile of corporate politeness, but the genuine satisfaction of someone who'd been sidelined just before their triumph. only to discover that the sideline was exactly where they needed to be to see the whole field burn. The moment of being pushed aside hadn't broken me. It had freed me to become something they never saw coming, successful, powerful, and completely beyond their reach. And that, more than any investigation or scandal or public humiliation, was the revenge that would echo through every corridor of every glass tower where someone's work was being stolen, where someone's contribution was being erased, where someone was being told they didn't matter. We all matter. Some of us just take longer to prove it. Thank you for listening to this story of corporate karma and sweet revenge. I'm curious. Where are you listening from? Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your own thoughts about workplace justice. Have you ever witnessed corporate karma in action? I'd love to hear your experiences.